Thank you, Mr. Sridharan. As I noted in my opening statement, concerns have been raised about the adequacy of the Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, or the CVD process, and the timing of the notice to the U.S. government. How could industry guidance provide more detailed advice on when and whether to notify the U.S. government, and how to coordinate complex multi-party disclosures for vulnerabilities like Spectre and Meltdown that affect so many companies in different industries? And I would open that up to anybody on the panel who would like to respond to that. Yes, sir, Mr. Mannion.
Thanks for the question. So the current guidance that I'm familiar with does account for this sort of notification. However, in light of the Spectre and Meltdown disclosures, that guidance may need to be updated or made more clear or more forward in the guidance. So it is certainly possible to change that guidance. My organization actually participates in standards development that helps those things, helps that guidance develop. But there's also a practice that has to happen as well. So it may be possible that through actually practicing that type of government notification more often, that will set the standard and the norm for continued behavior in that direction.
Anybody else on that? Next question, I'll direct this to Ms. Dodson. NIST is well known in the cybersecurity arena for serving as an honest broker and for convening stakeholders to address complex problems. How could NIST facilitate new public-private partnerships to address responses to complex cybersecurity vulnerabilities going forward? And as a sort of a follow-up, for example, could NIST convene stakeholders to discuss improvements to CVD guidance and best practices?
Thank you for that question. And there is a large body of work that we can continue to build upon. The work of CERT-CC as an example, the standards body's work, our sister agency, NTIA's multi-stakeholder processes help support processes around vulnerability disclosure in a way that is to understand the complexities. In addition to that, I think the tie back to supply chain is critically important, and thinking about supply chain kinds of guidelines, et cetera. So NIST is continuing to work with stakeholders in a public-private partnerships to continue to convene discussions around supply chain, around vulnerability management, getting the word out, raising awareness, working with standards bodies, et cetera. So we are committed to doing that.
Okay. Well, we hope you'll step up your efforts in that regard. As our oversight is discovered, and I would direct this to Ms. Kim, and thank you, by the way, for coming today, ARM played a key role in responding to these vulnerabilities and notifying your business partners. You testified that ARM has refined its vulnerability handling process, including recognizing the importance of working with government stakeholders. So maybe you could tell us what impact these refinements have had so far, and is ARM considering any other ways to improve the process?
Yes, thank you for answering or asking that question. We certainly have put in a lot more effort as far as engaging with the research community. And that's an industry-wide effort, including all the players involved in both Spectre and Meltdown and additional ones as well. We've certainly seen, for example, this latest flavor, which is an ongoing area, collaboration that was closely done with the researcher, notification and disclosure to the relevant need-to-know parties, following, the coordinated disclosure guidelines. So we feel like we've made great progress and focusing on the balances that we struggle with, which is making sure that the public is safe while we're developing the mitigations needed to protect against those vulnerabilities.
And to include government stakeholders?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we welcome and appreciate the collaboration that we've been able to develop to date. At least ARM continues to plan for open dialogue, and where NIST and DHS and other government agencies are helpful, we will absolutely leverage all and every resource we can get.
Okay. I've big believer in public-private partnerships, and I think in this case, it's going to be really essential that happen. Dr. Griffiths, it's good to see you. As I mentioned, DSU is a world leader in educating cybersecurity professionals. Given that responding effectively to cyber vulnerabilities is both a technology and a people issue, how can universities play a larger role in developing our nation's cybersecurity workforce?
Thank you for that question. I think clearly universities are actively engaged in trying to address the issue of the cybersecurity workforce shortage. As I mentioned, one of the critical factors that limit our ability to move as quickly as we could is the availability of faculty. We have 1,000 students in the Beacon College of Computer and Cyber Sciences. We could easily have 2,000 students, but we wouldn't have sufficient faculty to actually conduct the teaching at the level of quality and integrity that we expect. So we have a supply problem in terms of sufficient people to come into the teaching environment. As people, the number of PhDs that are produced in the cyber sciences is 2% relative to 8% for other STEM disciplines, and people can earn significantly more times the academic salary by going into the government sector or the corporate sector. So we're in constant competition, and we're constantly trying to attract faculty to come and work with our students. I think that's a critical bottleneck that we have around the country, quite frankly.